So let's talk a little bit about rates or percentages, ratios, why these are important when reporting data. Um, when we're contrasting rates, the opposite would be raw numbers or sometimes absolute numbers. That's the opposite of rates. If we say percentages, that essentially means the same as rates. And one of them just gives the pure number. The other one gives the number out of something or the percent out of something. So it would be a fraction. Rates and percentages are fractions, whereas the absolute number is just a simple number. So absolute numbers sound simpler. Why do we care so often at rate? Let me give you some examples of absolute numbers and where they fall short. So if we hear someone say, I got 32 questions right on my Spanish test, do you say, oh, I'm sorry? Or do you say, congratulations? It really depends. I mean, if there were 33 questions on the entire test, then this is a great score, 32 out of 33. That's wonderful. If there were 100 questions on the test, this is 32 out of 100, and that probably wouldn't be so good, depending on what the test was doing. Whereas if someone says, I got a 98% on my Spanish test, right away, you don't know how many questions there were, but you know that they got most of the questions right. So there's where a rate or a percentage would give you more information than just the raw number of questions getting right. Let's say someone says, last season I scored 35 points. Like I'm talking athletics. Is that great? Is that good? Is that average? It depends. If it's maybe talking about the star quarterback or running back of a football team where they can score 6 points at one time, I guess 35 would be a little awkward to get there unless you counted the extra points. But that would be maybe not that impressive. If you're talking about a soccer player, field hockey, lacrosse, 35 points in a season would be pretty amazing. So again, the raw number here isn't helping us out. In this case, it might be a little hard to say a rate with the points, but you might say how many points per game. That would help tell if you played one game or 50 games, or like baseball, 162 games. You could even get fancy here and put this as a standardized score so you could compare across sports. But that's that's when we get into normal distribution. So let's skip that for now. Or what if you heard that 2.8 million people liked a particular video on YouTube? You might think, wow, this must have been an amazing YouTube video. Maybe I'll go check it out. And maybe you should check it out, but this video I'm referring to here is YouTube Rewind 2018, which basically took all these different popular things from 2018 and mushed them all together. Has 206 million views, and it does have 2.8 million likes, but it has 18 million dislikes. In other words, of the people who rated it, just around 10%, maybe a little more than 10% liked the video. Typically, good YouTube videos worth watching are at least 90%. I love to see ones that are 95, 96, even 98% approval ratings. Whereas this, even if you know the raw number of likes, it doesn't tell you the quality of the video. A much better picture is the percent. Now, it does say something, the amount of views it has. That might be something worth taking into account. But for me personally, when I'm looking at several different YouTube videos, let's say I need to learn about a statistical topic, or I'm trying to learn something about programming, I might type in a search for YouTube, or maybe even just a funny video. I just want to watch a funny, I don't know, cat video or something like that. And then seeing the top results, I like to see what the percentage of likes is for a video before I invest my time in it. And that's how I compare. Or same thing with Amazon purchases. You can compare the rating out of 5. That's a rate. That's a percent. Here would be an example of a data chart that I saw about coronavirus that I don't think is that helpful. It's talking about the size of the lockdown, showing how India is really strong, then China, then United States. To me, this is essentially just a population map of the different countries. If instead they said what percent of each country was shut down, because here we can see China's a lot bigger than this, so a much smaller percent of China was shut down than India. That would be more interesting to me than just saying basically the sizes of the countries. Another example related to COVID. We're looking at COVID deaths here. This was as of early August. And notice the story. Remember, we're talking about the data always tell a story. Let me show you the difference between the story from absolute numbers and the story from rates. If we just look in terms of absolute number of deaths, and then we look at all the countries in the world, as of August 13th, the USA had far more deaths than any other country. Now, there's also some issues of data quality and what's counted as a death. How do you know if it's the COVID that caused it versus the underlying condition? I'm not even going to get into all of that. Right now, I'm just going to use the same data set, but I'm going to show it to you in 2 different ways. So think about the message that this tells. This tells us that the USA is either not doing very well at all in how they handle COVID, or somehow they're more susceptible to it than other countries. Now, taking that same data, I also created a chart where I ranked all the countries in the world based on COVID deaths per million. So here I'm now factoring in the size of the country. So if you have 1 million deaths in the US versus 1 million deaths in Belgium, there's a huge difference. 1 million deaths in Belgium, which is a small country, is much more serious than 1 million deaths in the United States. In terms of, and both are serious, but in terms of if we're trying to make a comparison. So here, if we look at this, suddenly some countries bubble to the top that you may or may not be very aware of. San Marino has the highest COVID death rate, or as of August 13, in the world. This is how many deaths per million. This is another way of showing a rate or a percentage. There's multiple ways to do it, as long as you're somehow controlling for the size of the countries or the size of the groups, and that's what's happening here. One interesting little note, if you have small countries or small groups, they'll often float to the top if you're looking at the highest rate, and they'll also float to the bottom in terms of the lowest rate. In other words, if you were ranking a bunch of groups on rate, oftentimes the highest and the lowest groups will both be pretty small groups, or there will be a lot of small groups. And that gets into variation, which is a topic that we'll touch on soon. So here, the US is not even in the top 7. I think there were 9 or 10 in this. So still, even when you measure it by rate, the US has struggled substantially more than most countries in the world for whatever reason. But it doesn't paint quite as bad of a picture for the US's handling of the COVID cases. So the story here is different whether we do absolute numbers or rate. And here's another way of doing rate. So people per COVID death. So instead of saying 300 out of every million have died from COVID, here you're saying 1 in every 800 people in San Marino have died from COVID as of this date. So again, this is controlling for the size, so it's another way of reporting a rate or a percentage. And again, the main reason is you can make comparisons across groups or to yourself. If you're trying to monitor your progress over time, looking at a rate is much better than looking at an absolute number in many situations. Okay, and let me just give you an example, one final example. So this is a report that I publish every couple years on rural education. And one of the things I look at is each state, just what percent of the students in that state attend school in a rural area, in a rural school district. And here you can see that some of the heaviest states are up in the Northeast here, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts. These don't have a lot of students. If I were to rate by number of rural students, and I actually do that also, but the percent of rural students tells me how rural a state is. If, let's say Ohio has about 1 million rural students, and yet it also has a lot of non-rural students. Um, Sorry, I just had to do a fact check on myself. That didn't seem right that a state of 15 million would have 100 million rural students. So I double checked. Ohio only has 360,000 rural students. But still, that's much, much more than if we're talking Vermont. Vermont has, let's see, only 48,000 rural students. So Ohio has many, many more rural students than Vermont. But if you drive around Vermont, it's going to seem like it's much more rural because in terms of percent of the students, over half of the students in Vermont attend a rural school, whereas in Ohio, only less than a quarter of the students attend a rural school. So it's much easier to make those comparisons even among groups of different sizes. So that's essentially the main reason why we do rates and percentage, because we can make comparisons easier either between groups or with ourselves over time or in different situations.